Welcome back. This is The Real Story, where we're going to take the time to give context to some of the events that go on during the 2016 race for the White House. Sometimes we'll have to go back a few days, weeks, or months, or sometimes years to find the events that are still relevant. As we find out today, foreigners are hardly the only people to be violent against the American homeland. Ask most Americans to name a terrorist attack, chances are they're going to think of 9/11 first. Attacks like that one have been carried out by foreigners, and the 9/11 hijackers, most of them were from Saudi Arabia, but also from Egypt, Lebanon, and the United Arab Emirates. Fast forward 15 years to today, and the United States and the rest of the world is facing a similar threat from the same region, but the terrorists are no longer connected with al-Qaeda. Now it's ISIS.
ISIS seems willing to go to basically any soft target where people are. And so defending against al-Qaeda meant protect symbolic targets, protect transportation hubs, but that gave security services something to focus on. And with ISIS, they seem willing to basically hit anywhere, and that becomes very difficult to stop because that would require such a police state that people wouldn't actually want to live under. That would be even worse.
But when Americans see the footage of the Colorado Planned Parenthood shooting, the carnage is bad, but the difference now is the perpetrator. The suspect is an American, Robert Deere. We don't know much about him quite yet, but at the very least, he's the latest in a long line of terrorists already born within the United States borders.
Unfortunately, it wasn't very surprising to me personally, just given the environment we live in and the violent society we currently live in.
But let's take a walk through history. Between 1978 and 1995, Ted Kaczynski terrorized Americans by mailing and setting bombs periodically, earning himself the nickname the Unabomber. Over that span, he killed 3 people and injured 23 more. But his power came from the fact that he used the Postal Service to deliver many of his bombs. And no one knew if they would be the next unsuspecting victim. That kind of influence eventually partially convinced the New York Times and Washington Post to publish his manifesto, which ironically led to his brother recognizing his writing and contacting the authorities. Right before the Unabomber was arrested, though, Timothy McVeigh carried out the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. That killed 168 people and was the deadliest act of homegrown terror in U.S. history. It also killed 19 children. McVeigh was a Desert Storm vet and was driven to violence in the United States after seeing his federal government kill its own people in standoffs in Idaho and Texas. Jim Denny's children were both hurt during that explosion. CBS News spoke with him the night it happened and again 20 years later.
You've seen the building.
I've seen the building. What's left of it?
It's a miracle you have your children today.
It's an absolute miracle.
It's with us every hour of every day, and we see it and live it.
One of the most recent attacks now, besides the shooting at Planned Parenthood, was a shooting at a church in Charleston, South Carolina. Dylan Roof is accused of shooting and killing 9 people in a historically black church during a prayer meeting. Authorities have said that the shooting was racially motivated, and Roof has pleaded not guilty, and he's due to have his trial next summer.
We must find it in our heart at some point in time, not only to help those that are victims, but to also help his family as well.
Then just this past week, roughly 15 people were killed and a few more were wounded when gunmen opened fire at a holiday party in San Bernardino, California. Police say Tashfeen Malik and Saeed Farouk opened fire on that party at a social services center for disabled people Wednesday. Family members say the 2 attackers were married, and law enforcement officials say Farouk worked as an environmental specialist at the county's public health department. So as we learn more about what happened in San Bernardino, we'll find out if this falls into the same category as the Charleston shooting and the Colorado Springs shooting. The one thing that's clear, though, is that the threat from terrorism doesn't exclusively come from overseas. Coming up next, hear all about the small rural high school who's had multiple presidential candidates stop by, and they're not even done yet.